Hello friends, this is Dr. Perverse speaking from my cinema dungeon, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Fantaterror series that I've guest curated at the Metrograph Cinema on 7 Ludlow Street in Manhattan, where I'll be on hand to introduce a couple of screenings in the flesh, as it were. What is Fantaterror, you may ask? The word is a portmanteau of fantasy and terror, used specifically to designate the horror fantasy films produced en masse in Spain or by Spanish directors working abroad, primarily during the 1960s and 70s, and primarily under the dictatorship of General Francisco Franco, no relation to Jesus Franco, featured in the series. Fantaterror is a genre that is traditionally considered to have begun with Franco's 1962 The Awful Dr. Orloff, which is playing in the Fantaterror series, both at 7 Ludlow and streaming online. Though there are, of course, important local antecedents to Orloff, including Edgar Neville's 1944 The Tower of Seven Hunchbacks. Some significant figures in Fantaterror represented in Metrograph's Fantaterror Español series include Armando de Osorio, auteur of the Blind Dead films, the fourth and final of these. The quietly unnerving Night of the Seagulls will be playing in 35mm, I'm happy to say. There's Carlos Ored, also, whose superlative 1974 Blue Eyes of the Broken Doll you can see, a vehicle for Fantaterror superstar Paul Nashi, who co-wrote the picture. This will also be on 35. Eloy de la Iglesia's 1972 The Cannibal Man will also be on view, a film that proceeds according to this relentless snowballing nightmare logic, and also Narciso Ibana Serrador's Who Could Kill a Child, one of the chefs-d'oeuvres of Fantaterror, in my own humble opinion. I should mention also that there will be 2 one-off blindfolded screenings of films so rare and so undeniable in their enormous artistic achievement that only a fool would miss out. This is only a small sampling of Fantaterror en total, but I hope it will function as a sort of tantalizing amuse-bouche to the adventurous cinematic gourmand. Now, in my role as guest curator, I've made the decision to try to emphasize titles with particularly Spanish settings, which means, lamentably, we won't be seeing Jorge Grau's 1974 The Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue, which comes with the distinctly drizzly English setting that the title implies! Now, in my role as guest curator, I've tried to emphasize titles with Spanish settings, which means, lamentably, we won't be seeing Jorge Grau's 1974 The Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue with the distinctly English, drizzly, mizzling setting that the title implies. In the films shown instead, you will find the unmistakable imprint of the English horror film of the period Hammer films, Amicus, Tygon, and so on and so forth, as well as the Italian Giallo, and 1972's Tombs of the Blind Dead has unmistakably more than a touch of George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead to it. But I fancy that these Fantaterror productions have a sort of national character all their own, both stylistically baroque, richly perverse, and it may be argued possessed of a subversive and sometimes distinctly anti-clerical streak that is quite at odds with the dominant phalangist political line of the moment. As mentioned, almost every film in the program was produced during Franco's regime, the lone outlier being Pedro Almodovar collaborator Ivan Zuleta's 1979 Arabato, a Fear of Cinema classic. I fancy that those who are taken to cinema by, shall we say, prurient interest will find much that is of interest here. But moreover, there is a great deal to be seen by those who have a taste for the transgressive possibilities of cinema. So come, dig in. Thanks for watching, and I'll remind you also to tune in Tuesdays at 11:15 to Dr. Perverse's Cinema Dungeon. That's WXIP in Middletown, Ohio. And for those of you in the greater Dayton area, I'd like to see you out on the 27th when I will be cutting the ribbon on a new Walgreens that they have up there in Fairborn.